that made her aunt laugh even more. "Yes." "So, was it true?" the little girl insisted. "Of course not. As you have already worked out for yourself, Filippo simply wanted to ensure that all Lorenzo's inadequacies would be put on display. He stayed away from the building site until the representatives of the Opera del Duomo went to visit him at home, because the work was no longer proceeding as planned. When the most important families in the city asked him to return, he demanded that he be given complete control of the work. And did he succeed? What do you think?" "Of course he did," said Catherine confidently, "because the Medici had chosen him." Clarice looked at her niece in surprise. "You have learned the lesson well," she said. "It's all thanks to you, Aunt." "Do you really think so?" "Of course I do." "Very well, then. Now that you know how the dome was built, what do you say about going home? Am I mistaken, or do you have Latin to study?" "Oh, come along. How do you think you will become a real Medici without study?" "Oh, all right then," the little girl said, throwing up her hands and mimicking the expression that her uncle often assumed when, while speaking to Clarice, he realized he had no chance of prevailing. "But can we stay and look at the dome for a little while longer?" "Very well," replied her aunt, stroking Catherine's head. Then she, too, raised her eyes and was bewitched by the sight of the great dome of Santa Maria del Fiore. It was truly beautiful. August 1536. Chapter 1. The Dauphin. He had screamed until his throat was raw. An excruciating pain, like liquid fire scorching his very soul, had torn at him, and he had grasped at his chest, dropping the crystal goblet of water which had shattered on the floor. And now Francis's eyes were glassy, and his head lay on his shoulder. His white hands dangled over the arms of the chair, the fingers white and cold. The face was a mask, its features still beautiful, yet carved with a rigour that knew only one name. He could not answer the voices that called to him. He was dead. There was banging on the door of his room, soldiers trying to break their way in. At the umpteenth charge, the door finally gave way. Monsieur Raymond de Polignac, captain of the 2nd Company of the French pikemen, rushed into the Dauphin's room, followed by the rest of his men and a couple of maidservants. When he saw Francis slumped lifelessly in the armchair, he dropped his wide-brimmed hat with its large white feather to the floor. "Your Highness," he murmured in a broken voice. One of the maids screamed, and Raymond gestured to a spearman, who immediately led the two women out of the Dauphin's room. Raymond looked at the simple chair with its blue velvet upholstery and thought of his king, who had just lost his favourite son. He shook his head, went over to Francis, and gently closed his eyes, then retrieved his plumed hat from the floor and raised it to his chest. With a sigh, he looked at the golden rays of sunlight which filtered into the room through the gap between the brocade curtains. The smell of death was already starting to fill the air. The war had arrived there. Charles V of Habsburg had invaded Provence and even reached Tournon-sur-Rhône. But now that humid summer, all mosquitoes and sweat, had begun to weaken his troops, making them enervated and sickly. He was thinking of returning to Savoy. And that wasn't all. Francis I, the King of France, had made scorched earth of his own kingdom. The fields had been burned, the wells poisoned, and the countryside emptied. And now nothing grew there. The land had been murdered by its own sovereign for the sole purpose of preventing it from offering